as Middle-earth.
Lord of the Rings, along with the other works of J.R.R. Tolkien based in the land of Middle-earth, is widely considered to be the most seminal work in the fantasy genre. Any high fantasy series that you've watched or played in a video game borrows heavily from Tolkien's definitive work. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that high fantasy, as we consume it today, wouldn't be what it is if J.R.R. Tolkien hadn't created the Lord of the Rings and his subsequent works. Having spawned arguably the most successful movie franchise of all time, it was just a matter of time before someone made a television adaptation of the show. That someone would be Amazon Studios, who would announce that they'd acquired the television rights to The Lord of the Rings in November 2017. Development on the series would begin as early as 2018, but like most other things, it'd be delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The first season of the show finally premiered on September 1st, 2022, on the streaming platform Amazon Prime Videos. Titled The Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power, it ran for a total of 8 episodes, each lasting for a little over an hour. We soon found out that the show took massive liberties in terms of lore and characters from the original source material. Some of it was due to licensing issues, as Amazon hadn't managed to snag the rights for the entirety of the Lord of the Rings franchise, and others were merely their own creative decisions regarding the direction of the shows. Unsurprisingly, the series met with a massive backlash from die-hard fans of the franchise, and was lambasted as poorly written fan fiction. Despite the uproar the show caused, Amazon touted it as their most watched Prime Video original series. There were also some redeeming qualities, like the visual representation of the Second Age of Middle-earth, which were all rendered faithfully, along with certain character dynamics like Elrond's friendship with Durin. Most likely spurred on by its financial success due to its record viewership numbers, Amazon announced a second season for the show. The new season is set to debut on Prime Video on August 29th, later this year, and continues the saga of the Rings of Power, 3 of which we finally got to see in the very last episode of the first season. The show has been teased for a couple of months now, with the official trailer dropping on July 27th. We had a look at the final trailer, and we must say things are looking pretty good. There are several scenes in the trailer that Tolkien heads amongst you can immediately recognize. We'll be doing a full trailer breakdown soon, so be sure to keep an eye out for that as well. One can only hope the showrunners will have learned from the first season and will get a much better Lord of the Rings experience. From the looks of it, there'll be some of the usual suspects making a return to the show, along with some fresh faces, both friendly and hostile. In this video, we'll cover some of the new characters and creatures you'll be meeting on your journey through Middle-earth. We'll also cover some key characters that'll be making a return in the second season, just to refresh your memory. We understand that some of our viewers might be new to the Lord of the Rings franchise, or perhaps have only watched the movies and want to get into the show. This video will provide you with a comprehensive understanding of all the denizens of Middle-earth that'll cross your paths in this new season. For all you Lord of the Rings veterans out there, we'd love for you to check out the video just to jog your memory and maybe help our newer viewers if we miss anything with your valuable comments. So, without any further delay, let's start this one video to rule them all. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. New characters to watch out for in the second season of Rings of Power. Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. You might have seen a dubious elf that very much looks like Halbrand or Sauron from the first season during the teaser and trailer for the new season of the Rings of Power. This is because it is indeed Sauron, who in the source material comes disguised as an elf to Celebrimbor in Eregion, claiming to be a herald of the Valar, who are the gods of Tolkien's universe. In this form, he calls himself Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and he comes bearing a benevolent attitude and an eagerness to share his knowledge regarding the forging of things of beauty and power. Being originally a Maiar of Aule, the smith god before his servitude to Morgoth, Sauron possessed great knowledge and skill regarding smithing and crafting of things. This is the reason Celebrimbor and the other Noldorian smiths took to him easily, without suspicion, and learned the forging of wondrous things, including the Rings of Powers. They wouldn't recognize his malice until it was too late for them to undo what they created. In the series, however, Sauron has already assisted Celebrimbor in the creation of the first 3 rings at the end of the last episode of the season. It is therefore interesting to see what role he'll play as Annatar in the upcoming season. Perhaps the elves will not be able to recognize him in this form, and he'll indeed go on to assist Celebrimbor in the making of the remaining rings, even as he senses that he's creating something of evil. He might be known as the Lord of Gifts, but there's a reason why he's also known by his other name Sauron the Deceiver, the one and only Lord of the Rings. Tom Bombadil. The character of Tom Bombadil is one that spawned several discussions and theories regarding his true nature. Tolkien himself, however, had this to say about Tom Bombadil. Even in a mythical age, there must be some enigmas, as they always are. Tom Bombadil is one, intentionally. He truly is an enigma, unaffected by the power of the One Ring, and is shown being able to even wear it or see Frodo when he goes invisible while wearing the ring. Originally first referred to in a poem called The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, he predates the Lord of the Rings books. He's seen as having magical powers, but as stated, due to his enigmatic character, nothing is explained regarding its source. Tom Bombadil is described as an extremely jovial man who constantly sings and dances without a care in the world. He's described as wearing a ragged pointed hat with a long blue feather stuck on the band. Tom wears a blue coat and large yellow boots. He's too tall to be considered a hobbit or halffoot, as they're known in the Amazon series, and not quite tall enough to be considered to be one of the race of men. He's described as having a bright red face adorned with a long brown beard and eyes the color of a clear, bright sky. Peter Jackson sadly omitted him from his Lord of the Rings movies, but we're glad that Amazon Studios has decided to bring him to life in their series. In the source materials, he's not mentioned at all during the events of the Second Age of Middle-earth. He'll be played by the actor Rory Kinnear, and we can't wait to see how he's portrayed in the series and his role within the story of the Rings of Power. Círdan, the shipwright. The 3 Elven Rings of Powers are first forged, unlike the source material, where they're forged last. We're given snippets of the rings and their bearers during the final trailer. We're given a shot of an elf standing near Gil-galad and Galadriel, before we're shown 3 hands adorned with the 3 rings for the Elven Lords. We know from the books and some shots from the trailer that the hands belong to Galadriel, who wields Nenya, the Ring of Water, Gil-galad, who bears Vilya, the blue ring of air, and Círdan, to whom the red ring of fire, Narvi, is given. He's set to be played by the British actor Ben Daniels from the show The Crown. Círdan was a Sindar elf lord who escaped the destruction of Beleriand, which resulted in the reshaping of the map of Middle-earth after the War of the Valar against Morgoth. He'd make his abode on the mouth of Sirion and establish the Grey Haven, where he'd provide shelter for any who would seek it during the Second Age. He was responsible for rescuing Gil-galad and bringing him out of Beleriand. Later, during the Third Age, the elves would come to his abode to use his ships to sail west into Valinor once again. As a character, even though his status and importance are heavily impressed upon the audience, he's largely absent from the primary action. One of his most important acts would be to give Gandalf the Rings of Fire Narya to aid the wizard in his journeys. We hope the showrunners at Amazon gave him a much more active role in the upcoming series, as he's definitely one of the characters that fans wish Tolkien had fleshed out better. Narvi, the Dwarven Smith. One of the more marginal characters in Tolkien's legendarium, Narvi is a dwarven smith mentioned only in the appendices of The Lord of the Rings. Narvi dwelt in the mines of Moria, or Khazad-dûm as it was known back then in the Dwarven tongue. In the book titled Unfinished Tales, published posthumously by Tolkien's son Christopher Tolkien, Narvi is described as Celebrimbor's greatest friend. Their collaboration and friendship would aid in establishing strong ties between Khazad-dûm and Eregion, and would see an exchange of knowledge resulting in the creation of great works. Together with Celebrimbor, he'd make the doors of Durin for the western entrance of Khazad-dûm. If you're familiar with the movies, it's the magical door that only appears under moonlight and needs a password for the Fellowship of the Ring to enter. With the English actor Kevin Eldon set to portray the first ever on-screen depiction of Narvi, it's still a mystery what role he'll play in the grander scheme of things. Perhaps he'll help Celebrimbor forge the 7 Rings of Power for the dwarves, along with the doors of Durin. He might play an integral part in exposing Sauron's true identity, and in the distribution of the 7 Dwarven Rings, the latter of which, knowing the dwarves, will not be an easy task. This is one of the characters that they can really unleash their creative license with, as even Tolkien only mentions him in the appendices. We can only wait and see what role Narvi will play in the upcoming Rings of Power Season 2. Mirdania. Played by British actress Amelia Kenworthy, she's set to join the ranks of the show's exclusive characters in the upcoming Rings of Power Season 2. We've been told that Mirdania is set to be the protege of the Elven Master Smith Celebrimbor. She will therefore play a key role in the forging of the Rings of Power. The people at the show have further noted that her loyalties will be tested when Sauron arrives in Eregion, offering to aid Celebrimbor and her fellow Smiths. It's not made clear how her loyalty will be tested. Perhaps she'll be seduced by the powers of Sauron and betray her master, or maybe seeing her master change under Sauron's influence, her loyalty toward him will waver. There's a lot of possibilities when it comes to this new character, and we can't wait to see how she influences the story. On a side note, she's the first named Gwaith I Myrdain, who were a brotherhood of elven smiths based in Eregion that worked with and under Celebrimbor. Canmir and Rian. These are 2 of the new show-exclusive characters that we're set to see in the upcoming Rings of Power season. Canmir's character is described as being an expert strategist and map maker. The showrunners mentioned that an unforeseen danger requires him to find an alternate route to Eregion. This unforeseen danger is most likely Sauron's siege of Eregion after he abandons his disguise. In the books, he launches an all-out attack on Eregion to claim the remaining Rings of Power, mainly the 3 Elven Rings from Celebrimbor. Canmir and his party members are also set to be Elrond's warriors, meaning they're coming from Lindon to aid Eregion in the battle. It's also mentioned that the journey is interrupted by the Barrow-wights, which are basically evil spirits that haunt the graves of fallen warriors. They serve as the antagonist of Tom Bombadil, who rescues Frodo and the hobbits from the clutches in the Fellowship of the Ring novel. It's most likely possible that this is where we're introduced to Tom Bombadil's character in the show. Canmir is said to be portrayed by actor Callum Lynch, previously seen in Dunkirk and Bridgerton. Rian is another member of this party and is described as being an expert archer, one of the finest in Queen Linden. She's set to play an important role in the battle for Eregion, along with Canmere and Elrond. We've not been given more insight regarding her character, but we can guess she's going to be part of the same journey as Canmere, along with some epic fight scenes in the series. We'll have to wait and see if she'll be able to establish herself amongst the other strong female characters in the Tolkien legendarium, like Galadriel and Arwen, or even Tauriel from the Hobbit films. She's going to be played by the actress Selena Lowe in the upcoming season. New creatures of Middle-earth. The final trailer for the new season also gave us a sneak peek into some iconic creatures from the Tolkien legendarium that'll be making their appearance. The world of Lord of the Rings contains an extensive bestiary of creatures both fantastical and grounded in reality. It looks like the second season of the show is set to introduce us to many more of these epic creatures. Here are some of them that we could discern from the trailer. Great Eagles. The Great Eagles are possibly one of the most important creatures in the Lord of the Rings and its extended universe. They're supposed to belong to Manwë Sulimo, the leader of the Valar, and such act as his emissary and heralds. He sends them to Middle-earth and Númenor, and their appearance is said to signify the blessings of Manwë and the Valar. Throughout the course of history, they've played an important role during crucial moments in the lore. During the First Age, they rescued the body of the mighty Elven king Fingolfin after his duel with Morgoth. Their king Thorondor was able to wound Morgoth's face during this event. In the War of Wrath, when the forces of the Valar would march upon Morgoth, the Eagles would play an essential role in fighting the fallen Valar's dragons and even help in defeating Ancaligon, the largest dragon to ever exist on Middle-earth. During the Second Age, they'd make their eyrie at the king's house in Armenelos, the capital of Númenor. Later, in the Third Age, they'd come to the aid of Frodo and Sam after the One Ring's destruction. Ents and Entwives. Upon learning of Aule's creations, the dwarves, his spouse Yavanna, the Valar, whose domain was nature and all things that grow in it, were highly distressed. She feared that her husband's creations would destroy hers in order to fuel their need to craft and forge things. She would appeal to Manwë to therefore allow her to create children of her own, who would act as guardians protecting her creation from the dwarves and others who would seek to destroy them. To this end, she'd create the Ents and the Entwives as shepherds of the forest. They're one of the most ancient races on Middle-earth and look like sentient trees. The Ents were taught how to speak by the elves in the early days. We get to see many of them in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films. Treebeard, one of the Ents that Merry and Pippin come across inside a Fangorn forest, tells them that the Entwives were lost and not even one had been seen in a long time. At some point in their history, the Entwives decided to move further east to tend to the lush gardens in the region. It is, however, speculated that they were destroyed by Sauron sometime during the late Second Age and early Third Age as collateral during his War of Conquest. The Ent we see in the trailer of The Rings of Power sounds and looks very much like an Entwife. It makes sense for them to make an appearance because they should still be around during this time period. Tolkien mostly kept the fate of the Entwives a mystery, and they don't make any appearance in any of his books. Shelob, the Great Spider. For those familiar with the books and Peter Jackson's film, the giant spider whom Samwise Gamgee defeated is set to make a return in The Rings of Power Season 2. Shelob is supposed to be one of Ungoliant, the primordial spider's last offspring. Her presence is tolerated by Sauron as her lair lies in Cirith Ungol and guards the passage above Minas Ithil that leads to Mordor. Although they don't have any direct ties, Sauron is said to feed her with prisoners and even orcs sometimes to keep her happy. Shelob is supposed to have taken up residence in Cirith Ungol long before Sauron established his lair in Mordor. Her early days are shrouded in mystery. It is widely assumed that she escaped the fall of Beleriand and settled down in her final location. Balrog. The Balrogs are supposed to be Morgoth's chief and oldest servants, who often function as shock troopers for his army through the various wars of the First Age. They play a prominent role in the various events of the First Age, like the fall of the hidden kingdom of Gondolin and rescuing Morgoth from Ungoliant. Balrogs are Maiars as well, just like the wizards and Sauron himself, although likely of a lesser stature. At some point in the First Age, they'd be seduced by Morgoth, who was still known as Melkor, to join him. He'd then twist and corrupt them to turn into spirits of fire and shadow, transforming them into demons. Most of the Balrogs would be destroyed during the War of Wrath and the fall of their master. It's unclear how and when the Balrog that's shown in the Rings of Power came to reside beneath Moria. We do know that he was powerful enough to take on even an Istari like Gandalf on equal terms. It'd require Gandalf to give up his life during his battle to slay the demon. Although the show retains much of the Balrog's appearance from Peter Jackson's movies, the original description of the creature is much more varied in the source material. In some of the descriptions, they're also described as humanoids, being able to ride dragons, while in others they're described as towering beings of flame and shadow. They also seem to have a hierarchy within them, and their chieftain was known as Gothmog. Sometime in the Second Age, this Balrog in Moria would destroy the dwarves of Khazad-dûm and slay Durin the Sixth, earning itself the name Durin's Bane. This would also make it the only other Balrog with a name besides Gothmog. Since his awakening has been expedited in the series as the current ruler of Moria is still Durin III, with his son assuming the title of Durin IV, we might see the same events as the books play out, but different characters. Key returning characters. Let's now refresh our memories on some of the key returning characters that will have an increased role in the story of the series. Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor, the grandson of the greatest Noldor Fëanor, will play a much more prominent role in this new season. Without his character, the show doesn't exist, as it's he who crafts the Rings of Power with the aid of Sauron. At the end of the first season, he's deceived into transforming the mithril given to Elrond by Durin IV into the 3 Elven rings. We believe that in order to correct his mistake, he'll be once again deceived by Sauron as Annatar into creating the remaining Rings of Power. The show takes quite a lot of liberty with his character, hence it's difficult to provide you with a background relevant to the series. It's most likely that Celebrimbor will begin to realize that he's being manipulated by Sauron and will finally turn against Annatar. This will result in Sauron dropping his guise and attacking Eregion to claim the Rings of Power. In the books, he's a proud Noldor who seeks to follow in the footsteps of his grandfather Fëanor, the creator of the Silmarillion. Celebrimbor wishes to create something far superior to the jewels created by Fëanor, which will help him surpass his grandfather's legacy. Just like Fëanor, however, he's deceived, and his creations fall into his enemy's hands. In the book, he forges the 3 rings of the elves last hidden from Sauron, and though they shared a connection with the One Ring, as they were created using the Dark Lord's techniques, they were untainted by him. The 3 rings were also considered to be the most beautiful and powerful of all the other Rings of Power. Sauron would march upon Eregion, sacking the city and claiming all the Rings of Power except the 3, killing Celebrimbor in the process. Adar. One of the biggest changes that we'll see in the Rings of Power Season 2 is that Adar is going to be played by an entirely new actor. The outgoing Joseph Mawle, who played the role in Season 1, has been replaced by Sam Hazeldine for the upcoming season. Adar was revealed to be one of the first elves taken in by Morgoth to be twisted into orcs. He has a falling out with Sauron at some point after the fall of the first Dark Lord due to Sauron's treatment of the orcs. He served as one of the main villains for Season 1 of the show and was one of the primary suspects. Sauron. We believe that he'll continue in his nefarious ways in this new season as well, but due to his standing in opposition to Sauron, his character might start making a transition from villain to anti-hero. Adar is a show-exclusive character and isn't featured in any of Tolkien's works. Despite this, he was one of the saving graces of the first season and became widely popular with the viewers. After such a strong portrayal by Joseph Mawle, Sam Hazeldine has some pretty big shoes to fill. We're sure he'll bring his own interpretation to the character while paying homage to Joseph's rendition while making it his own. Elrond, half-Elven. Elrond is all set to make a return in the second season of the Rings of Power as well. In the first season, we got to witness Elrond as more of a diplomat and a pacifist. He's a far cry from the wise leader of the elves with an astounding gift of foresight as we see him during the Third Age of Middle-earth. He's still a herald of the High King of the Elves, Gil-galad. From the looks of the new trailer, it seems we're going to be seeing him more as a warrior this season. This will surely bring back memories of Hugo Weaving's rendition of the character in both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, where we see Elrond in several action sequences. In the source material, when Annatar tries to extend his gifts to Gil-galad and Elrond in Lindon, he's rejected by both as they sense his malice. Elrond tries to warn Celebrimbor about the true nature of Annatar, but is ignored by the elves of Eregion. In the first season of the show, he's shown as a friend to Durin IV, which isn't seen in the source material. He has an important role to play in the siege of Eregion, as in the books he appears too late to save the city, and Celebrimbor is forced to retreat. This leads him to establish the last homely house, Rivendell, or Imladris in the Elven tongue, with the remaining elves who followed him.
Is it my task to stop the fire?
The Stranger. The Stranger was introduced to us in Season 1 as a potential candidate to be Sauron. It is, however, established by the end of the season that he is in fact an Istari, or wizards as they come to be known later. Even if we went by the books, Gandalf shouldn't be appearing so soon into the Second Age of Middle-earth, and he certainly doesn't make an entrance via meteor. The signs so far, however, all point toward the Stranger being Gandalf or Mithrandir, played so masterfully by Sir Ian McKellen in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. In the series, Gandalf, so far only known as the Stranger, is played by the actor Daniel Wayman, and there seems to be a lot of focus on his travels before he became known as Gandalf. The love for the Harfoots, who are the substitute for hobbits in the show, and the ability to control fire, as Gandalf calls himself the wielder of the sacred flame of Anor, along with his travels into Rhûn, all but confirm this theory. We forget that it wasn't just the blue wizards that made their way into Rhûn and the eastern part of Middle-earth. Gandalf traveled extensively in these parts and performed several acts that greatly weakened Sauron's hold over the Easterlings. As the 3 Elven rings have been brought forth, we'll maybe even see him wield the red ring Narria, which in the source material is passed on to him by Círdan the shipwright upon his arrival to Middle-earth. Regardless, we're sure to see more of the Stranger, and perhaps even have his true identity confirmed.
I'm afraid, Durin.
Durin IV. During the events of the first season, Durin is stripped of his title, and his father closes down his mithril mining operation. He's a friend of Elrond, who seeks to change his father's conservative ways. This isn't to say that he's not shrewd or calculating. The title of Durin is given to the dwarfs belonging to the king or the crown prince, who are direct descendants of the first dwarf. Durin IV is said to bear a striking resemblance to the original Durin, with many considering it a true reincarnation of their race's father. In the series, we know that he's in opposition to his father, who's wearing one of the 7 rings of powers forged by Celebrimbor and Sauron for the dwarfs. He'll most likely join the resistance, but he'll be held back due to a more pressing evil within his own halls, the balrog called Durin's Bane. It'll be interesting to see how this character develops further in the upcoming season. Galadriel. Morfydd Clark returns to reprise the role of one of the most iconic characters in the entire Tolkien legendarium, Galadriel, once more in the second season of The Rings of Power. Galadriel is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, elves in Middle-earth during the Second Age. She's considered to be the fairest elf in all of Middle-earth and Valinor. Coming from a royal lineage, she's the granddaughter of both the High Kings Finwë and Olwë. She follows the rest of her kin after their rebellion against the Valar to Middle-earth, where she stays until the last days of the Third Age. The character of Galadriel is far from the enigmatic lady of the woods that's portrayed in books and in Peter Jackson's films. She's shown as a fierce warrior driven by vengeance who bears an intense hatred towards Sauron and the Orcs. We hope she gets much needed character development in the upcoming series, and we get to see her develop into the powerful yet wise elf that deserves the title Lady of the Galadhrim. In the series, she still resides in Lindon, but we think we might get to see her establish Lothlorien after the destruction of Eregion by Sauron. An interesting bit of trivia regarding her relationship with Elrond is that while in the shows, they're shown to be friends, in the books, she's his mother-in-law. Elrond is actually wed to Celebrimbor, the daughter of Galadriel and Celeborn, with whom he has a daughter called Arwen, who in turn marries Aragorn Elisar, the king of Gondor and Arnor.
They must be destroyed. We will discuss the rings once you have answered.
Gil-galad, the High Elven King, the High King of the Elves. Gil-galad would come into power during the Second Age of Middle-earth thanks to the fact that there was no Noldor of royal lineage alive or present by the time of the Second Age in Middle-earth. His origins are debated because Tolkien refers to him as the son of Fingon, making him the great-grandson of Finwë, the High King of Noldor. In other tales, he's referred to as the son of Orodreth, which makes him the grandson of both Finwë and Olwë, the 2 High Kings of the Elves in Valinor. Being the only male heir alive, he's given the position of High King of the Elves. Gil-galad would be entrusted with the blue ring Vilya, and would form the last alliance of men and elves and march upon Barad-dûr. There, he'd face Sauron alongside Elendil and his sons before falling in battle at the hands of the Dark Lord. With the 3 elven rings strongly in focus for the second season of The Rings of Power, we believe Gil-galad will play an important role in the series. One last bit of trivia that's not explored in the show is that Gil-galad, if you believe his father to be Orodreth, makes him the grandnephew of Galadriel. We'll let you wrap your head around that while you wait for the show.
Fight with me.
Elendil. Elendil is one of the faithful Númenóreans who refuse to believe the falsehood spread by Sauron and their corrupted king Ar-Pharazôn amongst the Númenóreans against the Valar. He'd escape with his family and some of the others who were faithful to Middle-earth, even as Númenor would be swallowed by the sea. There, he'd establish the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor and rule as its High King. During the later stages of the Second Age, he'd form an alliance with the High King Gil-galad and lay siege on Mordor and Barad-dûr. There, he'd be slain alongside Gil-galad by Sauron. It's his broken blade Narsil that's used by his son Isildur to cut the finger of Sauron that bore the One Ring, temporarily vanquishing the great enemy. He's played by actor Lord Owens in the Rings of Power series, who does a stellar job in portraying him. The second season will most likely see the exodus we just mentioned, and he'll have a very important role in establishing not just his kingdom, but also the relationships with Gil-galad during the course of the show. With tensions rising in the first season due to the actions of Ar-Pharazôn, we feel like things will finally come to a head between those who support the usurper and those who are faithful. It'll be interesting to see the exodus of Elendil from Númenor and their journey to Middle-earth as they navigate the trials and tribulations along the way. Isildur. Isildur is portrayed as a young man who's brave and exceptionally smart, and who just wants to prove himself to his father. In the show, we'll likely see him grow from strength to strength as he grows into the warrior that he's destined to be. It'll be interesting to see how the show handles his fall from grace when he refuses to destroy the One Ring and instead keeps it for himself. having been seduced by its powers. It's hard to see the fresh-faced young mariner that we see in the show one day becoming this corrupted version of himself, though we know that's inevitable. In the series, his older brother Anarion from the books is missing. Therefore, there might be some changes to the founding of the Númenórean Empire on Middle-earth. In the books, the southeastern kingdom of Gondor was jointly ruled by him and his brother, while their father ruled from the northwestern kingdom of Arnor as the High King. He'd be betrayed by the Ring and die in an ambush by the Orcs while returning from the War of the Last Alliance. Since the show is mostly based on the Second Age of the Middle-earth, it'll be nice to see the man Isildur becomes during the course of this series. The show has a great opportunity to grant insights into the psyche and development of the person responsible for allowing evil to endure in his future by not destroying the ring. Marvelous verdict. With the new season almost upon us, we can't wait to sink our teeth into it. Despite the flaws of the first season and its reception among fans of the series, it still became the best-performing Amazon original show with over 100 million unique viewers. Yeah, the creators of the show have sometimes taken a lot of liberty, usually to the show's detriment, but we hope that the flaws of the first season were merely birthing pains. Now that they fully understand the weight of expectation that comes with taking on arguably the biggest fantasy franchise in the world, we hope they'll do a much better job recreating a Middle-earth that'll resonate with fans of the franchise and new viewers alike. If the trailer's anything to go by, they seem already well on their way to doing just that. We're cautiously optimistic about the show. Being the Lord of the Rings nerds ourselves, we really want the show to succeed. While fans of other franchises are drowned in content, we Lord of the Rings fans barely get any fresh content. Hopefully, we, the fans, are going to get a lot more of this iconic franchise in the near future. It'll be interesting to see where the new season of the Rings of Power takes us and how they portray some of the most anticipated parts of the season, like the Siege of Eregion and the forging of the remaining rings. It's highly likely that we'll get to witness the sinking of Númenor during this season as well. Who knows? We might even get a glimpse of the Valar during the course of the show. With some new faces joining the old cast, there are many wonderful stories that the showrunners can tell their audience. We feel like the viewership numbers might be a red herring for the actual reception of the show. One can only hope that they've come to understand why that was the case and have made the necessary adjustments to make this a show that's worthy of the fans' faith and Tolkien's massive legacy. Even Peter Jackson made a number of changes in his movies from the books that set him at odds with the Tolkien estate. We feel, therefore, Amazon should be given a chance to make the changes they feel necessary as long as they deliver a quality story set in Middle-earth. We definitely not recommend knocking it before trying it. Regardless, we're sure the show will once again perform well monetarily and in statistics, because we don't know about you, but we'll surely be catching the show when it drops this August 29th, 2024. Only time will tell whether we'll get a show worthy of the Valars or if it'll be cast into the fires of Mount Doom. We hope we were able to jog your memory and provide some information for new and old fans alike. Thank you for sticking with us right to the end of the video. Regardless of if the show is a flop or a hit, we'll see you in Middle-earth on 29th of August. Until then, stay safe, keep your lumber spread stocked up, and stay marvelous. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.